Two massive neon signs, spinning records, 7 stories tall, blazing red and yellow against Toronto's night sky. These aren't just signs, they're a declaration. They say, this is where music lives, this is where your tribe gathers, this is sacred ground. For 50 years, those spinning records on Yonge Street were more than advertising. They were a lighthouse, a beacon calling every teenager who felt misunderstood, every music obsessive searching for rare imports, every person who believed that music wasn't just entertainment, it was life itself. The signs spun every night from 1961 to 2007. And then one night, they went dark. Here's the question we're going to answer. How does the most famous record store in Canadian history, a store that survived the British invasion, punk rock, disco, grunge, and hip-hop, how does that store get murdered by a file format? Because that's what happened. Sam the Record Man wasn't beaten by better record stores. It was erased by something that wasn't even tangible, by ones and zeros, by the internet. But here's what nobody tells you about Sam's death. It didn't have to happen. There was a moment, one specific decision, where everything could have changed, where Sam the Record Man could have survived, could have evolved, could still be spinning those neon signs today. We'll come back to that moment. But first, you need to understand what we lost when those signs went dark. Because Sam the Record Man wasn't just a store, it was a cathedral. And you're about to learn what happens when you tear down a cathedral and replace it with an algorithm. Let's go back to 1937, Toronto's Yonge Street. The Great Depression is still crushing most businesses, but a 22-year-old Jewish kid named Sam Snyderman sees opportunity where others see desperation. Sam doesn't come from money. His father sold rags and scrap metal. The family struggled, but Sam has something more valuable than capital. He has taste. He understands music, loves it, breathes it, and he notices something crucial. People will scrimp on food, on clothing, on everything, but they won't scrimp on music. Music is survival during hard times. It's hope in audio form. Sam opens a tiny shop selling used records. Not glamorous, not even particularly profitable at first, but Sam has a philosophy that will define everything. Treat customers like family, and treat music like religion. Here's what made Sam different from every other record shop owner. He listened. A teenager would come in asking for something specific, a rare jazz import, a blues album nobody else stocked. Most shopkeepers would shrug, say, "Don't have it," and go back to whatever they were doing. Sam would write it down, track it down, order it, have it waiting next time that kid came in. This is the 1940s. There's no internet. Tracking down rare records means phone calls, letters, connections with distributors across North America and Europe. It's work. But Sam does the work because he understands something fundamental. Music people are tribal. Make one jazz fanatic happy and his entire circle hears about it. They all become customers. They all become loyal. By 1950, Sam's shop has moved to a bigger location on College Street. It's not called Sam the Record Man yet. That comes later. But the philosophy is already in place. The store stays open late because Sam knows music people aren't 9 to 5. They work weird jobs, weird hours. They want to shop at midnight. So Sam's open at midnight. The bins are meticulously organized. Alphabetical by artist, subdivided by genre. Classical separate from jazz, separate from pop, separate from country. This seems obvious now, but in 1950, most record shops just dumped everything together. Sam creates order, creates navigation, makes the hunt possible. And the staff, Sam only hires people who care about music, not just people who need jobs, people who can have passionate conversations about Miles Davis or Hank Williams or whatever obscure artist a customer is searching for. The staff become curators, guides, priests in the temple of music. In 1961, Sam makes the move that will define his legacy. He opens the flagship store at 347 Yonge Street, right in the heart of Toronto's downtown strip, and above it, he installs those neon signs. 2 spinning records, massive, visible from blocks away. The signs cost a fortune. Sam's accountant probably had a heart attack, but Sam understands symbol. He understands that retail isn't just about selling products, It's about creating identity. Those signs don't just advertise a store, they announce a place, a destination, a pilgrimage site for anyone who loves music. And people come, teenagers discovering rock and roll, jazz collectors hunting first pressings, classical music professors looking for obscure recordings, immigrant communities finding music from home. The bins at Sam's hold everything. You could spend hours and never see it all. Sam himself becomes a fixture. He's there almost every day, talking to customers, working the floor, making recommendations. Not from an office, from the store floor. He knows his regulars by name, knows their tastes. Jimmy, new Dylan just came in. I put one aside for you. Sarah, that French jazz you asked about, found a copy. This is retail as relationship, as community, as something that transcends transaction. But here's what most people don't understand about Sam's early success. It was built on a war he was willing to wage that nobody else would fight. The 1960s. Sam's flagship is thriving, but he's not satisfied with one store. He wants to dominate. He wants Sam the Record Man to be so ubiquitous that if you want music in Toronto, there's only one real choice. But there's a problem. Competition. A&A Records. Other independent shops. Department stores like Eaton's and Simpson's also sell records. How do you win when everyone's selling the same product? Sam's answer is brutal and simple. Price war. Here's how it worked. Every week, Sam would pick certain albums, usually new releases or popular titles, and sell them below cost. Not just discount them, actually lose money on every sale. An album that cost him $3 wholesale, he'd sell for $2.49. Pure loss. The competition couldn't match it. Independent shops couldn't afford to lose money on every transaction. Department stores had bureaucracy. They couldn't pivot prices weekly. But Sam could. Sam was nimble. Sam was willing to bleed short-term for long-term dominance. And it worked. People would come to Sam's for the Lost Leader albums. While they were there, they'd browse. They'd buy other albums at regular price. They'd become loyal customers. The Lost Leaders were advertising disguised as sales. The competition died. One by one, independent record shops closed. A&A Records, Sam's biggest rival, eventually sold out. By 1970, Sam the Record Man owned Toronto's record retail market. Not just competed, owned. But Sam didn't stop there. He started expanding across Canada, franchising. By 1975, there were 100 Sam the Record Man stores across Canada. By 1985, nearly 140 stores. In every mall, every downtown strip, if there was a Sam's, it was the place to buy music. Picture what this meant to small-town Canadian kids in the 1970s. Before the internet, before streaming, your access to music was limited to what local radio played and what stores stocked. Sam's stores were portals. They connected you to wider musical worlds. Walking into a Sam's in Thunder Bay or Halifax or Medicine Hat meant access to the same music available in Toronto or New York or London. The stores followed a template. The bins, the layout, the staff who knew music. But they adapted locally too. A Sam's in Montreal would stock more French-language albums. A Sam's in Calgary would have stronger country sections. Sam understood that music taste was regional, and he let each store reflect its community. The profit margins were thin. The price war never really ended. Sam was always undercutting, always pushing prices lower than competitors could match, but the volume made up for it. When you're selling hundreds of thousands of albums annually, thin margins on high volume still generate substantial profit. Through the 1970s and 1980s, Sam the Record Man was as Canadian as hockey. The spinning neon signs became iconic. Musicians would visit the flagship when touring through Toronto. It was tradition. Paul McCartney shopped there. The Rolling Stones, Canadian artists like Neil Young and Joni Mitchell. The store wasn't just retail, it was part of music culture. Sam himself became a Canadian business celebrity. Interviews, awards, recognition as a retail pioneer. But Sam never lost touch with the floor. Even as the empire grew, he'd still visit the flagship, still talk to customers, still make recommendations. A 15-year-old Toronto kid walks into Sam's with $10. He's bored with mainstream rock, looking for something different. He's flipping through the discount bin. the albums nobody else wanted marked down to $2.99, and finds an import album. Ramones, first album. He's never heard of them. The cover looks weird, angry, different. He buys it, takes it home, plays it, and it explodes his brain. This is what he's been looking for. Raw, fast, furious, nothing like the bloated rock on the radio. That one album, that one $2.99 purchase in the bargain bin of Sam's, leads him to start a band. That band becomes part of Toronto's punk scene, which influences other bands, which creates a whole movement. This happened thousands of times. Some kid, some city, some random album discovery at Sam's that changed their life. That's what we lost. That's what algorithms can't replicate, the accident of discovery. The randomness of flipping through bins and finding something you didn't know you needed. But by 1990, something's changing, something invisible and unstoppable. And Sam, for all his retail genius, doesn't see it coming. Sam the Record Man has 140 stores. The flagship is still a Toronto landmark. The business seems invincible, but if you look closely, cracks are forming. Crack number 1, the CD transition. When CDs replaced vinyl in the late 1980s, Sam initially benefited. People were replacing their entire vinyl collections with CDs, double buying albums they already owned. This was a windfall, 5 years of abnormally high sales as people repurchased their music. But here's what Sam didn't grasp. CDS changed the economics of music retail. Vinyl was bulky. You needed huge stores with extensive floor space for bins. This created barrier to entry. Starting a record store required significant real estate investment. CDS were tiny. You could stock thousands in a small space. Suddenly, anyone could open a music store. Gas stations started selling CDS bookstores, coffee shops, Walmart. The competition exploded, and they didn't play by Sam's rules. They didn't care about music culture. They just wanted to sell hits at high volume. They could undercut Sam's prices because they didn't carry deep catalog, didn't pay knowledgeable staff, didn't maintain extensive inventory. Sam's advantage, deep catalog, knowledgeable staff, comprehensive selection, was becoming a liability. Most customers didn't want deep catalog. They wanted the new Alanis Morissette CD, and they wanted it cheap. The casual buyer, who represented 80% of sales, could get that anywhere. Crack number 2, big box retail HMV arrived in Canada. A British chain with massive capital backing. They opened huge stores, sometimes 20,000 square feet, and positioned themselves as the premium music retail experience. Listening stations, video screens, concert posters, slick merchandising. Where Sam's felt like a record store, HMV felt like an entertainment complex. For younger shoppers who'd grown up with slick marketing and modern retail environments, HMV felt contemporary. Sam's, with its bins and handwritten staff picks, felt old. Then came Future Shop and Best Buy, consumer electronics chains that also sold CDs. They didn't care if they made profit on music. CDs were loss leaders to get people into stores to buy TVs and computers. They'd sell the new album for $9.99 when Sam's charged $14.99. Sam couldn't compete with companies losing money on music to sell other products. Crack number 3. The decline of albums radio was changing. The hit single mattered more than the album. People would buy a CD for one song and never listen to the rest. This frustrated customers. Paying $16 for one good song felt like a rip-off. Record labels responded by pushing singles more aggressively, but this hurt stores like Sam's. The business model was built on album sales. If music consumption was shifting to singles, how do you adapt when your entire store is organized around albums? I want you to understand what Sam must have felt watching this. He'd built an empire on principle, deep selection, knowledgeable staff, music as culture. Now he was losing to companies that treated music like potato chips. Bulk commodity, no reverence, no passion. Just product moving through retail channels. Crack number 4, the internet. But nobody saw what was coming. By the mid-1990s, internet retail was emerging. Amazon launched in 1995, but they sold books, not music, yet. Online shopping seemed like a curiosity, not a threat. Most people didn't even have internet access at home. The idea that you could download a song seemed science fiction. Sam saw these warning signs. He wasn't blind. But here's the problem. His solutions were all retail solutions. Open more stores, better locations, improved merchandising. He was fighting a retail war when the battleground was shifting to something that wasn't retail at all. In 1998, something happened that, in retrospect, was the beginning of the end. But in the moment, it seemed trivial. A 19-year-old college dropout named Sean Fanning released software called Napster. It let people share music files over the internet for free. Peer-to-peer file sharing. Completely illegal. Completely unstoppable. Record labels sued. Napster eventually shut down. But the precedent was set. The code was out there. Hundreds of copycat services sprouted. People could now get music for free. Instantly. Without leaving their homes. Record stores initially dismissed this as a fringe thing. Teenagers pirating music, so what? Teenagers had always taped albums off the radio or borrowed CDs from friends. This was the same thing, just digital. Except it wasn't the same thing at all. What they didn't understand, what nobody understood, was that Napster wasn't about free music. It was about the end of music as a product you go to a store to buy. Keep watching, because what happens next destroys everything. Let me paint you a picture of doom. 2000. Sam the Record Man operates 130 stores. Sales are $120 million annually. 2001. 115 stores. Sales $95 million. 2002. 90 stores. Sales $70 million. 2003. 65 stores. Sales $50 million. It's not a decline. It's a collapse. Revenue is dropping 20 to 30% annually. Stores that were profitable for decades are suddenly bleeding money. The downtown stores and malls, the locations that always made money, are dying. What happened? Three things converged at once, creating a perfect storm that drowned music retail. Storm Factor 1. Napster's children. Napster got shut down, but Kazaa, LimeWire, BitTorrent, and dozens of other file-sharing services replaced it instantly. By 2002, an estimated 60 million people were downloading music illegally. The younger generation stopped buying music entirely. Why pay $15 for a CD when you could download the entire album in 10 minutes for free? The record labels screamed and sued. They went after individual file sharers, creating PR disasters of lawsuits against teenagers and grandmothers. But they couldn't stop it. The technology was distributed. Shut down one service, 3 more appeared. Album sales industry-wide dropped 30% between 2000 and 2003. This wasn't just Sam's problem, it was killing all music retail. But Sam was particularly vulnerable because his entire model was built on volume and selection. When volume collapsed, the model died. Storm Factor 2, iTunes, April 2003, Apple launches the iTunes Music Store. Legal digital downloads, 99 cents per song. You don't have to buy the whole album anymore, just the hit single you want. This seemed like salvation. Finally, a legal alternative to piracy. But for record stores, it was actually worse than piracy. At least with piracy, there was hope that eventually law enforcement or technology would stop it. iTunes was legal, permanent, and positioned digital downloads as the future. Within a year, iTunes was selling 70 million songs. Within 3 years, 1 billion songs. People weren't just downloading singles, they were buying entire libraries digitally. The CD itself was becoming obsolete. Sam the Record Man had no digital strategy. None. The company was built on physical retail, bins of CDs, knowledgeable staff, the physicality of music. They had no way to compete with iTunes. They weren't a tech company, they were a record store. Storm Factor 3. The Walmart effect, Walmart Canada, expanded aggressively through the 2000s. They sold CDs as loss leaders. Prices so low they barely covered wholesale cost. Their goal wasn't profit on music, it was getting people into Walmart to buy groceries and housewares. A new CD at Sam's, $15.99. Same CD at Walmart, $9.99. The casual buyer, which was 70% of the market, went to Walmart. Sam's was left with the hardcore music fans, which wasn't enough volume to sustain 100 stores. Let me tell you what this felt like on the ground. 2003, Sam's flagship on Yonge Street. A staff member who'd worked there for 20 years watches foot traffic drop day by day. Saturdays used to be packed. You could barely move through the aisles. Now, Saturdays feel empty. The browsers are gone. Only serious collectors come in. The bins that used to turn over weekly sit stagnant. CDs don't sell. The store orders less inventory, which means less selection, which means even the serious collectors start going elsewhere because Sam's doesn't stock deep anymore. The staff gets cut. The knowledgeable employees who could recommend obscure jazz or punk imports? Laid off? Replaced with part-timers who don't know music, they just work the register. The soul of the store dies before the business does. The owner, Sam himself is elderly now, his sons run the business, walks through his flagship and sees a ghost. The bins are half empty. The customers are sparse. The magic is gone. This store that was a cathedral to music for 40 years feels like a mausoleum. Remember those spinning neon signs? By 2004, they're starting to look less like a beacon and more like a tombstone. 2004, 40 stores remaining. 2005, 25 stores. 2006, 15 stores. The company is in death spiral. Every store closure makes the remaining stores less viable. Customers lose faith. Sam's is dying, better buy elsewhere. Suppliers demand cash up front because they know Sam's might not be around to pay invoices. Credit lines dry up. June 2007. Sam the Record Man files for bankruptcy. Every remaining store will close. The downtown Toronto flagship, the one with the spinning neon signs that have lit up Yonge Street since 1961, will shut down permanently. The liquidation is brutal. Everything must go signs. CDs marked down 50%, 70%, 90%. Customers who loved Sam's come to scavenge final deals and pay respects. The atmosphere is funeral. Staff members cry. Regular customers cry. It's not just a store closing, it's the end of an era. October 30th, 2007. The flagship closes for the last time. The spinning neon signs, those iconic 7-story tall spinning records that had become Toronto landmarks, go dark. The music died. Remember the opening? I promised to tell you about the one decision that could have saved Sam the Record Man. Here it is, 1999. The decision to not launch Sam. TheRecordman.com as a serious digital platform. Let me explain why this was fatal. In 1999, Amazon was small but growing. They'd just started selling music. iTunes didn't exist yet. Digital downloads were still clunky. There was a window, maybe 3 years, where an established music retailer with brand recognition and deep catalog could have owned Canadian online music sales. Sam the Record Man was perfectly positioned. Brand recognition. Every Canadian knew Sam's deep catalog. 140 stores worth of inventory data, relationships with every label and distributor. Staff expertise. Knowledgeable employees who could curate online, loyal customer base, music obsessives who'd pay for reliable service. Imagine if Sam's had launched a comprehensive website in 1999 to 2000. Buy online, ship to your home. Or buy online, pick up at any Sam's location. Staff picks and recommendations online. Rare imports and deep catalog available to anyone in Canada. Message boards and community features connecting music fans. When iTunes launched, Sam's could have negotiated to sell digital downloads through their site. This could have worked, should have worked, but it didn't happen. Why? Because Sam Snyderman and his sons were retailers, not technologists. They understood physical stores, not digital platforms. They saw the internet as a threat or a curiosity, not an opportunity. They believed the answer to declining sales was better retail locations, not different channels. There's a tragic board meeting that happened in 1999. A younger executive proposes major investment in e-commerce, millions of dollars to build a serious digital platform. Sam and his sons reject it. Too risky, too expensive, not our expertise. Focus on the stores. That decision, that single no in a boardroom in 1999, was what killed Sam the Record Man. By 2003, when they finally realized digital was essential, it was too late. Amazon owned online retail. iTunes owned digital downloads. There was no market space left for Sam's to enter. They'd missed the window. Picture this. It's 2025. You're browsing samtherecordman.com. The interface is clean, but there's character, staff picks, curated playlists, deep dive articles about music history. You can stream, download, or order vinyl. There's a thriving community section where Canadian music fans discuss and discover. The physical stores exist too, maybe 15 flagship locations instead of 140, but they're destinations. Vinyl specialists, in-store performances, cafes, places where music fans gather, not just transact. The neon signs still spin on Yonge Street, not as retail advertising, as cultural landmark. As reminder of what survives when you adapt without losing your soul. This could have happened. The expertise was there. The brand was there. The passion was there. All that was missing was the willingness to bet on a future that looked different from the past. But that bet wasn't made. And so Sam's died. Do you understand the tragedy now? This wasn't inevitable. This wasn't the internet killed music retail. This was a choice to defend the past instead of building a future, a choice that destroyed something beautiful that didn't have to die. Let's talk about what died with Sam the Record Man, because it's not just a company, it's a way of experiencing music that's gone forever. We lost the hunt. Streaming algorithms tell you what to listen to. Spotify's Discover Weekly, Apple Music's recommendations, they're good at it. But they've eliminated the hunt, that process of flipping through bins not knowing what you're looking for until you find it. At Sam's, discovery was physical. You'd browse the S section looking for Springsteen and find Suicide, a band you'd never heard of, but the cover looked interesting. You'd flip through jazz and find some obscure 1960s recording that became your obsession for months. The accidents of alphabetization created discovery. Algorithms optimize for what you already like. The hunt exposed you to what you didn't know you'd love. That randomness is gone. We lost expertise. At Sam's, staff were curators. That guy working the jazz section? He knew every pressing of every Miles Davis album, could tell you which remaster was best, could recommend obscure saxophonists if you liked Coltrane. Now, you type a search, maybe read user reviews, but there's no human expert guiding you deeper into the genre, connecting disparate artists, sharing stories about recording sessions or musician connections. The expertise still exists in blogs, forums, social media, but it's fragmented. There's no place you walk into and find that knowledge concentrated, accessible, embodied in people who spend their days immersed in music. We lost physicality. Vinyl is making a comeback, sure, but it's niche. Most music consumption is streaming, files, algorithms, playlists. You don't own music anymore, you rent access to it. Spotify can remove albums. Services can shut down. Your library is conditional. At Sam's, when you bought an album, it was yours. The physical object, the artwork, the liner notes. You could hold it, display it, collect it. Your music library was tangible proof of your taste, your history, your identity. There's something psychological about ownership versus access. When you bought an album, you committed to it. You listened repeatedly because you invested in it. Now, with infinite access, we skim. Everything's disposable. Nothing demands sustained attention. We lost community. Sam's was a gathering place. You'd run into people, strike up conversations about music, make friends based on what you were buying. Staff would connect customers. Hey, you like Sonic Youth? That guy over there was just asking about them. You should talk. Music retail created accidental community. You'd see the same people regularly. The jazz guy who came in every Wednesday, the punk girl always looking through imports. You'd nod recognition, sometimes chat. These weak social ties built a sense of belonging. Online, you can find music communities, subreddits, Discord servers, forums. But they're chosen, filtered. At Sam's, you encountered people through music, across social boundaries, the teenage skater and the middle-aged jazz professor both browsing bins, connected by location and passion. We lost ritual. Saturday afternoon, go to Sam's, flip through new arrivals, check the discount bins, talk to staff about what's good, buy an album, take it home, put it on. Listen, start to finish, reading liner notes, absorbing the artwork. This was ritual, intentional, a practice that gave structure to music consumption. Now, music is ambient. Background. Playlist that shuffles while you work. The ritual of focused listening has been replaced by passive consumption. A guy I know, call him Mike, tells me about 1988. He's 16, working a summer job at a grocery store. Minimum wage, terrible hours. He saves $120 over 2 months. On his day off, he takes the bus downtown to Sam's flagship. He's got a list. Albums he's been obsessing over, reading about in music magazines. He spends 3 hours in the store, flipping through bins, asking staff questions, listening at listening stations. Finally, he selects 6 albums. His $120 buys exactly 6. He walks out clutching the bag like treasure. He gets home, puts on the first album, sits on his floor reading lyrics, studying artwork. He listens to that album 5 times that week. Not because he couldn't move on, because he invested in it. It was his. He gave it time to reveal itself. All 6 albums became formative, shaped his taste, connected to memories of that summer, that job, that feeling of anticipation walking into Sam's with money burning in his pocket. Mike's kids stream music, millions of songs, free. They've never spent 2 months saving for 6 albums, never spent 3 hours in a record store deciding, never sat on the floor giving an album 5 consecutive listens. He's not sure his kids have a worse music experience, but he knows it's different. And he knows something valuable was lost. Some relationship with music that can't be replicated by infinite access. Those spinning neon signs represented all of this. They spun every night, promising that music mattered, that culture existed, that some things were worth gathering around. When they went dark, something in Canadian culture went dark with them. The story doesn't quite end with Sam's closure. There's an epilogue that's both hopeful and heartbreaking. When Sam's closed in 2007, the spinning neon signs came down. The building was sold. Ryerson University, now Toronto Metropolitan University, bought the property. Plans for development. Another glass tower, probably. But Torontonians revolted. Not violently. This is Canada. But there was genuine anger. Those signs were landmarks. Tearing them down felt like cultural vandalism. They weren't just advertising. They were art, history, identity. A campaign started. Save the signs. Petitions. Public pressure. Even city council got involved. The argument was simple. These signs represent Toronto music history. They're as iconic as the CN Tower or the Toronto sign. Destroying them destroys part of the city's soul. Ryerson agreed to preserve the signs. They came down carefully, restored at significant expense, and in 2017, 10 years after Sam's closed, they were reinstalled on the building, mounted as permanent art installation. They don't advertise anything. They just exist. A memorial to what was. On the night they were relit, hundreds of people gathered. A spontaneous street party. People who'd worked at Sam's, musicians who'd shopped there, fans who just wanted to see the signs spin again. When they lit up, those massive spinning records glowing against the Toronto skyline, people cheered, some cried. The signs spin every night now, but they're haunted. They point to nothing, advertise nothing. They're a ghost, spinning eternally, marking where music retail used to live. Here's the irony. Just as Sam's died, vinyl started coming back. Young people, Generation Z, kids born in the 2000s, started buying turntables, buying records. Not for sound quality or nostalgia. They have no nostalgia for vinyl. They weren't alive when it was dominant, but for the physicality. They want objects, want album art, want something real in a digital world. Vinyl sales have grown every year since 2007. In 2023, vinyl sales in Canada hit $60 million, highest since the 1990s. Independent record stores opened to serve this demand. Sonic Boom in Toronto, Red Cat in Vancouver, Sunrise Records, which ironically bought Sam's trademark and operates some mall music stores under that name, though they're nothing like the original Sam's. These stores are small, curated, run by music obsessives who operate on passion more than profit. They're niche, not mainstream. Vinyl represents maybe 5% of music revenue. Streaming is 85%, but that 5% has soul. Could Sam the Record Man have survived to serve this vinyl revival? Maybe. If they'd maintained one flagship store instead of trying to sustain 100 locations. If they'd pivoted to specialty rather than mass market. If they'd accepted being niche and beloved rather than dominant. But Sam's was built for scale. 140 stores, massive inventory, volume-based business model. They couldn't shrink gracefully, so they died completely. Sam Snyderman himself died in 2012, 5 years after his empire collapsed. He was 92. The obituaries called him a music industry pioneer and retail legend. They celebrated his contributions to Canadian music culture, but I've read that in his final years, Sam didn't like talking about the business. The collapse wounded him. This was his life's work, his legacy, and it died in front of him. He'd built something he believed was permanent and watched it become obsolete. There's a particular cruelty in outliving your empire. Sam saw the neon signs go dark, saw the flagship empty, saw his name become history rather than current. That's a heavy thing to carry in your final years. His sons tried to defend the decisions. We couldn't have predicted streaming. The industry changed too fast. Everyone in music retail struggled. All true, but also, somewhere in those defenses, the unspoken acknowledgement. We missed the window. We should have adapted differently. We lost something that didn't have to be lost. Today, if you ask Canadians under 30 about Sam the Record Man, most have never heard of it. It's been dead longer than they've been alive. The neon signs spinning on Yonge Street are public art, not memory. The context is gone, but for Canadians over 40, the name triggers immediate nostalgia. They remember. Remember Saturday afternoon record shopping, remember the bins, remember staff recommendations, remember the feeling of walking out with a new album, anticipating that first listen. That memory lives strongest in musicians. Almost every Canadian artist over 40 has a Sam story. I bought my first Ramones album there. I worked there for 3 years, learned everything about music retail. I'd spend hours browsing, building my collection. The cultural impact can't be quantified. How many Canadian musicians were influenced by albums they discovered at Sam's? How many music fans developed taste through recommendations from Sam's staff? How many relationships formed? How many subcultural movements connected? How much Canadian music culture was facilitated by those stores? We can't measure it. We just know that something was there, something valuable, and now it's gone. The spinning signs are beautiful, but they're monuments to loss. Every night they spin above Yonge Street, advertising nothing, selling nothing, just spinning. A ghost of what Toronto was when music retail mattered, when discovery was physical, when community gathered in stores, when those signs meant, this is where music lives. We traded Sam the Record Man for Spotify. We traded physical ownership for streaming access. We traded expert curation for algorithmic recommendations. We traded community gathering places for isolated listening on headphones. We traded the hunt for frictionless delivery. Did we gain or lose? The honest answer? Both. Music is more accessible now than in human history. Spotify has 100 million songs. For $11 per month, you can access more music than you could buy in 10 lifetimes at Sam's. Discovery is easy. Algorithms are good at finding new artists you'll like. Sharing is instant. Send a link, your friend hears it immediately. These are real benefits. Huge benefits. I'm not romanticizing the past as if it was purely better, but something's missing. Something intangible but real. Let me try to articulate it. When you streamed music this morning, and you probably did, how much did you care about what you listened to? Not enjoy. I'm sure you enjoyed it. But did you care? Did you make a conscious choice, invest attention, commit to the experience? Or was it background? Playlist on shuffle while you worked, drove, exercised? Music as ambient soundtrack to other activities, consumed passively, disposable. This isn't your fault. This is what streaming optimizes for. Frictionless consumption, infinite choice, background ready. It's efficient. But efficiency and meaning aren't the same thing. At Sam's, buying an album was significant. You spent money you'd worked for. You chose carefully. You committed. And that commitment created attention, created meaning, created relationship with the music. The algorithm doesn't want your commitment. It wants your subscription. It wants you to stay on the platform, consuming, streaming, generating data that improves recommendations, that keeps you streaming more. The algorithm has no soul. It can't have passion. It can't tell you why a particular album matters, can't share the story of a recording session, can't connect you to a community of people who care about the same artist. The algorithm is optimized for engagement, not meaning. Remember I said there was one decision that could have saved Sam's? We covered it, the 1999 choice not to go digital seriously. But there's a deeper truth here, Sam. The record man couldn't survive because it represented values that don't scale efficiently. Expertise over algorithms, community over convenience, ownership over access, curation over infinite choice, physical ritual over digital efficiency. These values don't work in platform capitalism. They're inefficient. They're high friction. They require human labor that can't be automated. So they died. Not because they were bad, because they were incompatible with how digital commerce works. The tragedy isn't that Sam's died. The tragedy is that we didn't build anything to replace what it provided beyond the transaction. Streaming gives us music, but Sam's gave us more than music. It gave us community, ritual, expertise, physicality, meaning. We got more efficient access to more music, but we lost the infrastructure that made music matter. This pattern repeats across culture. Local bookstores replaced by Amazon. Local newspapers replaced by social media. Local communities replaced by digital networks. In each case, we gained efficiency and lost something harder to quantify. Something about meaning, connection, shared physical space. I'm not saying we should go back. You can't go back. The world changed. But we should be honest about what was lost. Should acknowledge that progress in efficiency isn't always progress in meaning. Should recognize that some things can't be replicated digitally, no matter how good the technology gets. Those spinning neon signs on Yonge Street spin every night. They're beautiful. They're haunting. They represent a moment in Canadian culture when music retail was about more than transactions, when it was about community, identity, passion. The algorithm can't replicate that. Will never replicate that, because the algorithm has no soul. Sam the record man had soul, and we didn't realize how much that soul mattered until it was gone. The music didn't die, but something in how we experience music died, how we discover it, how we connect with it, how we share it, how we care about it. That's what we lost when those signs went dark.